Hi all, this is Allmighty and welcome to this video. So in this video we are back with one of Capablanca's games, and today I'm going to show you a game against Mr. Harry Kline, a game that was played in an American national tournament held by Manhattan Chess Club in 1913. So in the last video we covered that there was a loss by Capablanca against Akiva Rubinstein, but nevertheless he won the San Sebastian tournament in 1911. So I just want to catch you up a bit. So yeah, the timeline is I skipped 2 years, but yeah, essentially after that tournament in San Sebastian, Capablanca went on going to do something that he likes the most, or something that he liked the most to do in that part of his life. Held simultaneous exhibitions all over the place, and yeah, winning games. So for the second part of 1911, he actually went to South America. There he played in Argentina, in Uruguay, all over the South America, held simultaneous exhibitions against players in those countries. Then after that he went back to Europe, where he played in Netherlands, in Denmark, in Germany, once again all over the place, just playing and winning. And yeah, the winning rate was somewhere between 95 and 100% in almost all of the exhibitions. So yeah, a pretty decent result for a man such as he. And actually in 1912, after all of that, he felt really confident and decided to put up a challenge with the current world champion, Emanuel Lasker. So wanted to also talk about that one. But yeah, looking back to it, Lasker probably should have accepted Capablanca's changing of his terms and just play a game against him, because many masters today and even before were in agreement that essentially Capablanca, even though he was crushing all over the place, that he still wasn't the guy who is in that form or at his top game that can actually challenge. So everybody was expecting that maybe one day, with the continuous development and everything, he can come to this position where he can challenge Lasker, but that wasn't really his time. So Lasker was actually at his prime at that time, and Capablanca maybe was over too confident and went on and challenged him, but in the end he didn't agree on Lasker's terms in order to play a match. So the terms were something like the first guy who comes to 6 wins. So as it was in that day and age, you had this, so who first come to what amount of wins, and draws do not count. But Lasker put a limit to the match of playing maximum of 30 games. And when the 30th game would have been played, they would actually watch the current result, and actually the winner could have been the guy who has a 2-point lead or more, of course. So that was the Lasker's proposal. Also, one important thing, the challenger has to pay $10,000, so something that was really like a crazy amount of money to play a chess game at that time. So we're talking about 1912. And yeah, okay, Capablanca on one hand, yeah, didn't really had a problem with the money, or so he says, but the other thing was he had a problem with the terms of that, being that, okay, I can win 6 wins, but 30 games isn't too much when you think of terms in chess, where like almost most of the games are ended up in draw on the high level. So he wanted to have it like Lasker had it against Steinitz, where they played up until who first comes to 10 wins, but the match was unlimited, so you can play it on and on until there was a winner. But yeah, Lasker didn't want to do that, and in the end, yeah, there was no match. But yeah, people say that Lasker probably should have taken the challenge in order to, yeah, that he was a much better player at that time, and he could take that as a psychological advantage into the next challenges that actually happened later. So yeah, that one in 1921, where Capablanca actually won. But yeah, it is what it is. Unfortunately, yeah, it didn't happen, but okay. Nevertheless, Capablanca is continuing his feat and his story, and we come up to this game. So American National is actually a tournament held and by Manhattan Chess Club. Once again, you have really strong players in the tournament, like David Yanofsky, where I So I covered a game between him and Capablanca, so yeah, a couple of videos ago. In San Sebastian, you have Marshall, a very famous, already known to all of you guy, and yeah, a lot of strong American players, and also amongst them is Harry Kline. So once again, I couldn't find a picture, but nevertheless, why I wanted to show you this game is a very good endgame study is in it. So yeah, please, I will point it out at which point in time you should pause the video. You can take it and study the endgame and see what are actually the most principal moves in that endgame and how should you actually play it. So okay, after all, we are talking about Capablanca here, so there is bound to be some endgame video, very strong educational note in the end on this channel. So okay, nevertheless, let's move on to the game. Harry Kline is white and Capablanca is black, and we have a bit of a strange opening. So something called an in-game game Wade-Tartakower defense. So I'm not very familiar in openings that much, and also not really with this one, but I will tell you like my general idea about this opening. So after a couple of moves, we see that white is gaining more space and has much easier development. On the other hand, black has decided to go a little bit easier, have less space, but in the end has a development and a really safe king. So we have c6, queen to c2 and queen to c7, and now with e4 white expands in the center. And also Capablanca counters with e5. He wants to also gather some space in order to keep his game. Bishop to g3. Now the decision is to put the bishop here in order to, if black captures on d4, you're eyeing this d6 pawn. This is something that I would have done. You're keeping the pressure in the center, you have more space as white. This is a good game for you. Bishop to e7 and bishop to d3. So both sides just developing. I will quickly go through this move, so nothing too serious here. On both sides we have rook to e8 and we have castles. So up until this point, neither of the sides actually made some really serious move with some threat. But now we have knight to h5 by Capablanca, kind of a signature move for this tournament, because in most of the games, so I went through the games in order because this was a very important tournament for Capablanca. I want to show you a game from this tournament, not from simultaneous matches, because there mostly he played against weaker players and crushed them in style. So I just wanted to show you like a game against a better opponent. And in this game and in this tournament, knight to h5 to knight to f4 was one of his ideas in order to attack on the king side, and he tried it here as well. So we have knight to c4. White, on the other hand, also attacks in the center. So here Capablanca put the knight on h5, putting it on the edge of the board. But in the end, he is planning to play it on f4. There is no bishop on e2 or queen on d1, so that there are any discoveries with this knight. So it's perfectly fine to have the knight here. We have bishop to f6 defending on e5, and now knight to e3 remaneuvering to maybe jump to f5. So knight to f8 in order to cover that with the bishop, and now we have exchanges in the center. And the thing is, now I have a problem with this move, since the thing is, my thinking is that in this situation, white just has more space. As you can see, he is free to develop his rooks, maybe expand on the queen side, and that could bring him better game. The thing is, you don't want to exchange in the center maybe right away, since then you're giving black also a certain amount of space. And as you can see, black here doesn't have that much space. So I would keep things tense in the center in order to maybe give black some problems. I mean, there are no problems for black, so he is not in a worse position than anything. I just wouldn't, so my style of play isn't like here, where you open up the position right away. I would rather, if I have more space, build up on that, and then at the right moment, when I think it is, start to exchange and maybe win on some advantage, positional advantage. But nevertheless, we have d takes on e5, d takes on e5, and now one strange decision by Kline, moving the bishop to h4 in order to exchange it for this bishop, but on the other hand, you're leaving this f4 square wide open for this knight. So a really strange decision, but I will later show you also why that is proved to be positionally wrong. We have first queen to e7 by black and exchanges of bishops, and now we have knight to e1. So yeah, not really sure. Once again, the point of this move, I would rather develop the rook, put him on the open file, because there is no immediate threat from black here. There is no bishop to g4, for example, then to pin the knight or anything. You can, okay, knight to f4, when now we have bishop to f1 after you move this rook. Bring this bishop to defense of the king side. And after some development, you can also double up the rooks. There is no threat, something like this you don't want to take. You just play king to h1, f2 pawn is defended, and yeah, position is okay. But yeah, we have knight to e1 here, and now immediately Capablanca plays knight to f4, and yeah, he's attacking. So now he plays g3 Kline, and once again, why is this bad? So first you give up his dark square bishop, allow the knight on f4. Now you're opening up and weakening your king, and as you can see, light squares. And what does black have? Light square bishop. So yeah, like something that is like the most natural thing in this position would have been to actually capture this bishop on d3. And if white captures with the knight or with the queen, next move should have been bishop to h3, and after knight to g2, for example, we have a knight to e6, now playing to jump on g5, threaten maybe f3, or doesn't even have to be that if white can play f4, double up on the d file. The thing is, white has weaknesses on the light squares. You have the light square bishop, you should use it. But Capablanca, for some reason, didn't want to take the bishop. He played knight to h3 check. We have king to h1, and now we have h5. So his idea was more of a kingside attack with his pawns, and yeah. So okay, but that's also an idea, but I would rather take this bishop, because now light squares would be more favorable for black. Now we have knight from 3 to g2, and once again a strange move, because now you open this bishop to g4 idea like a possibility. I mean, not right away, because now f3 is possible, but probably this knight would have been better on g2. You have g5, and now if this knight stayed here, this f5 square would be wide open for it. I mean, not maybe even to jump right away to block off this knight. But okay, first we have f3. Also not really sure what is the idea behind this move, maybe to prevent right away bishop to g4, but okay. Knight to g6, Capablanca continues with the attack, and we have now this knight back to e3. So probably a mistake there. And now we have a closing up of the position by Capablanca. Okay, h4 was played, and now Kline played g4, which essentially made Capablanca decide to go into the endgame right away, because he is just better in that position. But instead of that, he could have just played rook to d1, a normal move, because after h takes, you have king to g2, rook to h1, and your position is still fine. There is no immediate threat from black. But yeah, Kline decided to close up the position, and now we have immediate knight from h to f4, rook to f2, trying to activate the rook. First he took on d3, knight takes on d3, and now bishop to e6, finally developing this bishop, and then he will put the rooks on the d file. We have rook to d1 and rook from e to d8. Okay, so now, as I said, Capablanca is going to the endgame right away, because this position is suiting black much more than white. We have b3, maybe an unnecessary move, since you cannot capture on a2 with black, because just push b3 and this bishop is trapped, and white is winning this game. So instead of that, okay, we have rook here, b3, maybe just putting it, not right away the other rook, you have to bring the knight here, because the f3 square is really weak now. So yeah, it is a question of time. Knight to f4, and we have knight to g2. So he wants to exchange this knight for this knight, but we have knight d3, rook dt, rook takes on d3, rook takes on d3, and queen takes on d3. So in this position, actually, Capablanca had one move. So once again, want to repeat exchanging because you are going towards a better endgame. And now in this position, Capablanca played a natural move, rook to d8, covering, so taking up the d file with the rook with tempo. But actually, he had bishop takes on g4. So something you could have seen because this pawn cannot capture it, this rook is undefended, but white has knight to h4, but after bishop to h3, now we have a bishop here covering these squares. It is not that easy to actually get rid of this bishop. If at some point even f4, you have g4 maybe, and yeah, then you have to put the rook on the d file and start making threats on the first rank. But okay, Capablanca didn't go for this, maybe because of knight to h4. He played rook to d8, which is also an okay move. We have queen to e2, and now h3. The final move, the final preparation move before going into the endgame, closing the position for good, because now we don't have this bishop to come to h3. Instead of that, we have a pawn, and after knight moves to e3, this king is in serious trouble because all of these pieces are cramping him, and yeah, he cannot go out that easily. And yeah, this pawn is doing a really good job, and it's not that easy to actually capture him. You need at least 2 moves, but in that time black is fast enough to actually create some threats. So now we have a5. Now the time is also to expand on the queen side. We have rook to f1, wants to put the rook on the d file, and a4. Now in this position, you can capture on a4, but after rook to a8, black will easily capture these pawns, and then he has a majority on the queen side, and this will be a much better position. So white didn't do that. He played c4 to actually block up the position, and now we have a rook to d4. Actually, in this position, white maybe could have played knight to f5 or something like that, but he played knight to c2 instead of that. Then we have a rook to d7, keeping the rook not on d8 back because the queen will come here in order to exchange. We have knight back to e3, queen to d8, and now rook to d1. Because the queen left in the attack of the f3 square, now the rook can also come here, and now we have exchange. Queen takes on d1, rook takes on d1, and knight takes on d1. Probably better could have been queen to d1 and then maybe see if black will exchange. Black, of course, wouldn't want to do that. Queen to b6, a much better move, keeping your queen because white is controlling with the bishop the light squares and with the queen the dark square. They're a much better combination. The position is close than this knight. But yeah, Kline probably took on d1 because then he has knight f2, knight h3 taking the pawn. But after queen to d4, I wanted to show you this position because in this position, even though the material is equal, black is in a much better position. So this is a position you can study. Here is a position where you can stop the video actually and look into this and try to figure out what is the best plan for black. Okay, I'm just going to tell you about a little bit about principles in this endgame. The thing is, you have a light square bishop, and as you can see, all of white's pawns, almost all, are on the light squares. So positionally, a really bad situation for black. On the other hand, now you've centralized your queen, and you control both sides of the board. Even more than that, you are, disabling this knight to move freely, and you are guarding this pawn and this square, so that at the same time you are also after a lot of exchanges, and if this queen becomes free, you are guarding yourself of possibility to have fallen into perpetual check. The thing is, the problem with the endgames where there is a queen, there is always a threat of perpetual check. And actually with this move, queen to d4, keeping the queen in this position, you're, as I've said, guarding d8 and e5. g5 isn't that much of a problem, but yeah, there won't be any perpetual checks anytime soon. And now it's time to expand on the queen side, because white has a problem on the king side. He has to take care of it, and he doesn't have time to actually manage both sides of the board. And Capablanca shows it with, just great play. I don't have other words than just great play. Knight to f2 wants to get rid of this pawn in order to get away with the king easily, and we have immediate b5, taking on the queen side. C takes on b5, and we have a takes on b3. You want to take this pawn because otherwise he will just capture and go to queen, and now bishop to b3. Now you cannot capture this pawn, or so you cannot capture this pawn because you have queen to a1, and this is just losing because knight has to cover, and bishop then takes. So you have to instead of that, you have to capture the h3 pawn, which Kline did, and now we have bishop to d1, and the reason is you want to attack the f3 pawn and force white actually to guard it before you go into capturing of the b5 pawn. If white doesn't guard it, then just bishop to f3, and once again the king is in the corner, and this is actually checkmate if white moves somewhere else. So queen to f1 guarding, and now we have c to b5. Once again, as if queen captures, then we have checkmate on f3. So king to g2 is played guarding this, and we have b4. So now it's time for the pushing of the pawn. As I've said, white just doesn't have enough time to cover threats on the king side and the queen side. Queen to b5, and now actually b3. A mistake by Capablanca in this finalizing of the game, unfortunately, but it's really hard to see the defense that white has in this position. So a better move could have been queen to c3 now in order to also attack this pawn, and now you have problems actually. You can play, if you play knight g5, then queen to d2 is check and also attacking of the knight. If you play knight to g1, then b3, b2, b1 is just fairly simple. And you can play maybe king to g1, but then it's just the f3 pawn is falling, so not a good position. Instead of that, he played b3 here, and now there are some ideas of knight to f2 attacking this bishop. So you want to move it. If you don't move it, if you push b2, then knight f2, you give up a pawn. So for example, bishop to c2, but now there is this queen to b8 check, and now king to g7 and queen to c7 actually. And now there's a problem. You cannot push the pawn because the bishop is attacked. Probably have to move the bishop, or you should move the queen somewhere. For example, if you move it, you have to move it on this diagonal because you have to guard the e5 pawn. So white is still holding it only by a thread, and black needs to figure out what is the best move in this situation. So it's really hard, this endgame. As I've said, it is a queen endgame, so it's really hard to see moves such as this. But as I've said, Capablanca played b3, and okay, fortunately for him, Kline didn't take advantage of that. So he played queen to e8 check. We have king to g7, and as I've said, queen is guarding e5 and d8, and there is no perpetuals. We have queen to e7. White just tries to do something on the f7 square. He will capture on g5. We have b2 now by Capablanca, and now there are two options. If queen captures on g5, this is not as good, but the king has to make a really long run in order to escape from all the checks. So we have king f8. There is no check on d8 because of the queen, so king to h6. We have king e7, queen g5, king e6, queen h6, and now, or even better, queen to f5, king to d6, f6, c5, e7. So this is just one possible example. King to f6, there are no checks on the d, so for example queen to f6, and now king to a5. Black has finally escaped, and the next move will be b1 promotion, and he wins the game. So in the end, in all of the situations, variations, black will run from the checks, but he has to make this long walk to actually do it. So instead of that, Kline actually captured with the knight, wants to capture on the f7, but simple bishop to b3 by Capablanca, and this is covered. So Kline in this position sacrificed the knight in order to have some checks, but this is just, I will show you until the end. king to f8, queen h6, king to e7, queen to g5, and king to e8. And in this position, Kline resigned the game. He is a piece down, and also there will be a promotion. Actually, in this position, there is a checkmate in 9. A really difficult checkmate to find, but if you want, you're free to find it. And yeah, this is pretty much it for this video. I hope you liked that position after the move queen to d4. If you want to go back to it, study it, and yeah, it is a really good teaching moment. So what is the best plan in that situation? So after this move queen to d4, what is the best course of action for black here? So he's clearly better, and you have to find this plan in order to win the game, because the material is equal. And yeah, but okay, so this is pretty much it for this video of American National Tournament, a very strong tournament, as I've said. I'm not going to be showing you the standings right away, because I'm not sure if I'm going to make another video from this tournament, but nevertheless, I will show it in the next video, whether if I will make that one or from the Havana chess tournament that quickly followed the American National. But okay, this is pretty much it for this video. As I've said, I would like to thank you for watching it, and I will see you next time.